there's a lot of things from the military aspect that they teach you and they instill in you early on, that you carry with you the rest of your life, and in our industry especially.
This is the Construction Veteran Podcast. Construction Veterans Podcast. Connecting and celebrating veterans in construction. Now, here's your host, Scott Friend.
Hey, Calvin, how's it going, man?
It's going pretty good, Scott. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, for sure, man. Good catching up with you.
Absolutely.
So Calvin and I actually worked together. That would have been, I want to say 2018, but it's been a few years.
Mm-hmm.
My first project in Dallas, Calvin was part of the building representation team. And so we met and found out we were both vets, which it's always you hit it off with a fellow vet. You just get to chatting about what you do. And so I had reached out to him to see if he would participate in this, and he's been making some moves. So we're going to get into that, what he's doing now, what he did. So Calvin, take me back to your service days. You were in the Marine Corps. What'd you do?
I was actually a calibrations tech. So when I joined, I didn't actually have any intention of joining the military. I joined in the end of 1999, and I just graduated high school. And my dad was also a Marine, so I come from the lineage of having that military, being raised by military and having that background. And he wanted me to go to college and do bigger and better things, but I wasn't ready for it. So I went and I met with a recruiter after I graduated and tested pretty well, and he gave me a big list of options, and I asked him what would suit me best when I get out. What would be something that kind of lined me up for a career path, and he pointed out the electronics and calibrations tech role, which was 6492 was the job. So I signed up. I was like, let's do it. Sounds good, and ended up having quite a bit of schooling from that. So through the military, which is worked out great for me in the long run. So,
well, good. So, you went in with the goal of you saw the big picture. You wanted something when you get out,
right?
That's
absolutely,
smart.
Yeah. So, like I said, I didn't really have any intention of joining the military when I graduated. It never really crossed my mind. I was planning on going to college. That'd always been my plan. And then after I graduated high school, it's just I don't think that is the path for me right now. I wasn't ready. I knew it, I felt it, and I needed to do something different. And so I actually got a call from the recruiter early one morning. He woke me up and he's like, what are you doing with your life? And that's kind of how it all started.
Not very subtle, man.
I was like, you know what? I don't know. Who is this? And he's like, this is, Staff Sergeant Golden with the United States Marine Corps. You need to come talk to me. And I was like, you know what? I think I will. So, it kind of just happened like that. It felt like, it was one of those intervention, God intervention type moments in my life that set me on a different path. And I haven't regretted a single moment of it. It definitely set me on the correct path. So when I joined, like I said, that was the end of 99. That was before, 9/11 and, everything got real crazy. So I joined with the expectation of getting to travel some, getting some education, getting some discipline, getting some, set on my right path for me. And then, a year, I think I was still at my A school at the time when 9/11 happened. Or maybe no, I take that back. I was in my B school with the calibrations part of it. And 9/11 happened, and everything changed very quickly on the service side, and what was expected of us, and what I was expecting to get out of the military. Anyways, everything changed so pretty quickly.
Let me dig into that a little more. So when that happened, because I had joined in 2004, so the things had already been kicked off. So when that happened, and you're serving, what was your thought process at the time? So you didn't even want to. You had no intention of joining. Now you join. We're not in a conflict of any sort, and then boom, it changes. So what was going through your mind at that time?
Yeah, it was pretty surreal, to be honest with you. We had I was still I was at the end of my B school at the time. We were about to graduate, be done, and get sent home, or sent to our next or base. I don't think I even got my orders yet, to be honest with you. But anyways, I remember waking up that morning in the barracks there. It was we'd actually had that day off. I'd been on security patrol, 24-hour duty the day before. So I remember getting woke up by my roommate and some other guys, saying, "Hey, jump up. We got it." But everything kind of hit the fan really quick, and it was very chaotic. And I remember them gearing us up completely. They locked the base down. It was all pretty, like I said, pretty surreal. You didn't really know what was going on. You wasn't getting a lot of information, which was typical with the military. But as far as overall mindset for the long, goes, like I said, I joined, and for the first year and a half or so that I was in and going through boot camp and my schooling, it was very, it was the Marine Corps, so it was very tough, and you're learning, you're going through a lot, and it was stressful, for what it is. But then 9/11 happens, and the stress and the thought process of what's going on and what is going to be expected. What are we, are we going to be end up getting deployed? Are we going to, be in a combat zone here soon? All those thoughts and fears that you hadn't really thought was a realistic reality up to that point start becoming true. So I remember myself and a bunch of guys sitting around, or huddled in a room, talking about, like what's going to happen, what's going on. So it was kind of it was definitely an interesting and scary type of time, and for us to wrap our brain around. So very interesting.
Yeah. So you gone in and you're thinking, I'm just going to do my 4 years or whatever and get out. But
Right.
Correct me if I'm wrong, you served 2 terms, right?
I only served one. I ended up.
You did? Okay.
I got extended a couple of times because we ended up getting deployed in 2004, and we ended up going 2 deployments over there, and then I was supposed to get out in 2005 when we were actually in country, and they extended me a year, and then we went back, and then they extended me another 6 months until we got back. And then once I got back, myself along with several other guys, we were up in June of 2006. So it extended our enlistment by quite a bit because of the tours that we did over there. So.
Yeah, that's wild, man.
So it changed everything
quite
pretty quickly.
Yeah. We got extended for 3 months in country, but man, a year and a half total.
Yes.
You got extended on your contract. That's wild.
Yes. Yeah. Total. It's a year and a half. It was, like I said, I went in thinking I was going to, get obviously the Marine Corps boot camp and training and schooling from the electronics and all that. And then I did complete all that. I mean, that was all great. And then, but as soon as I got done, I got back, I got to my base where I was going to be stationed. It was full on training and gearing up for getting deployed, which ended up happening a year and a half after that. So, in 2004. So it escalated pretty quickly into something completely different. Your roads and paths change very quickly in this life. So.
Well, so say we've got somebody that's listening that's a year to a year and a half out. So you had that extension. Did your mindset change in that, hey, okay, maybe you weren't ready to get out, and now you have this opportunity to start preparing more to make that transition into the civilian life? Did anything change in your mindset and how you prepared?
A couple of things changed. When I went in, I had full intention of I was going to be a full career Marine. I was going to stay in the 20 years or longer. I loved the lifestyle. I was enjoying it. And then, when all that happened, when 9/11 happened and we started gearing up for deployment, it was exciting, but in a different way. It was just, it was fear-based excitement, I guess, not the unknown, the unexpected, and what may be coming your way. So, I stopped focusing as much on my career and my life with the Marines versus just getting through the next few years and what it's going to look like. And especially after we found out, we got the orders that we were going to deploy. So when I found out my enlistment was getting extended, that did change some things. I started looking at it like, we're doing back-to-back tours over in Iraq, 2004, 2005. And, did I want to go back again? And that's kind of what I started asking myself is how much of this can I do? And I started asking my leadership of my unit as well. What are the odds? What are the chances that we have another tour over there and stuff like that? And they were pretty frank and pretty honest with me that it was very high. The chances were very high. We'd probably go back within the next 4 years. So that did change things for me pretty quickly. I was, I'm at that point, I'll start thinking maybe I should take chances on the civilian side of things and see what I can make of myself with the schooling I've got and go to college now. I felt like I was more ready for that. So after we got back in 2000, it was early 2006 and we got out. Started the separation process. I started looking at, schools and life for me outside of the Marines. And that's when I really started thinking about what that might look like for the first time. So
yeah, and who would have thought?
It was really after experiencing the deployments and being over in Iraq, for back-to-back years. It was there 10-month, periods with 4 months in between. It was that's when it really changed for me.
Yeah, that's I had my last guest we talked about. I had a guy. He was either KBR or Flora, I can't remember, but we're in country in Afghanistan, and this is like tail end of our deployment. Guy basically does what I do now. He was kind of like a superintendent, but he was just overseeing tent camps being built, those massive facilities. And he said, "Hey man, you want to come work with us?" And I said, "Dude, talk about bad timing, man." I said, I've gotten so close to dying so much. No, I don't want to do that.
Exactly.
But man, I mean, they paid really well, but I think it's wild too. You chose to get out. I mean, who would have thought that we would have been in that conflict for 20 years?
Right.
So yeah, you definitely made the right choice. And so I want to talk about that, what you're doing now. So what do you do at the moment? We can kind of go through your whole career history, but what are you doing right now in the industry?
Yeah. So right now, my title is VP of Capital with Stag Industrial. So we own industrial buildings all over the U.S. domestically. So there's actually 4 of us within that do what I do within the company, and we all share a portion of the U.S. I have the western half, so from Texas to California, some of the northern states. I've got about I've got 19 states that I oversee myself, and so my role really is making sure that the buildings, all of our buildings, we own them and we lease them out to tenants. Big box industrial users, warehouse, some manufacturing, and some specialty usage, but for the most part, it's dry storage, like Amazon, Walmart's, all those type of big companies that need space. And nowadays, especially since COVID, big box warehouse space where in storage has been in pretty high demand. So it actually hasn't hurt us much. It's been actually pretty good. But my role specifically is making sure that the buildings are being maintained properly. So I do a lot of traveling. I do a lot of building tours, inspections, making sure that those buildings are being properly maintained, because most of the leases dictate that the tenants are responsible for the majority of the maintenance and upkeep of the building. So I've just got to make sure that that's being done on a pretty regular basis. So that is my role in a nutshell. Slim down.
Yeah, and so you've been doing that for about 3 years now. We talked about you switched into that role in a very interesting time in our country's history.
Very true.
Yeah, so middle of 2020, golly. So prior to that, where I met you, you were doing you were PM for Stream Realty for their construction arm. So for those folks who don't know, Stream is one of the larger real estate companies out there, making large purchases of commercial properties for office buildings and other things. So that's how Calvin and I met. So my first question is, so from what you were doing when we met, how did you find your way into this industrial sector? That's a very niche thing you're doing. I assume Stag's not people count, maybe not a massive company, but you guys have a large account. So how did you go from doing the PM side of Stream into what you got now?
Yeah, so it was pretty interesting transition for me, because I was on, like you mentioned, with Stream Realty, which is a third party. Majority, they do a lot of leasing, brokerage, and third party property management, construction management for companies like Stag or Link, or there's other major REITs, which are real estate investment trusts, and different companies out there that they have managed their portfolios for them. So I was fortunate enough to get to a point where I was managing some pretty large portfolios when I was with Stream, and Stag happened to be one of them. I managed all of their properties, or I did the construction management and project management for all their properties in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. So I got to work with the guys from Stag, which our headquarters is in Boston. So they needed boots on the ground. Anytime they had a project at one of their buildings or one of their tenants were wanting to make improvements or what it might be, they would call on us because we managed their properties, and then they would get myself involved to oversee those projects locally and check on them, manage them, hire the contractors, hire the architects, engineers, whatever might be needed, and report back to them, keep them updated and stuff like that. So I did that for Stag. I did that for multiple different ownership groups and portfolios that we had at the time. And Stream is headquartered out of Dallas. So long story short, how I got involved with Stag and made the jump over to that side was Stag they opened their first remote office out of Boston in Dallas in January of 2020. And they were looking to have a VP of capital in that Dallas office to oversee the western half of the U.S. because travel from Boston to, say, like California, as you can imagine, is quite a trip. So it made sense to have somebody, in the Dallas office that they were opening up. So they opened that office, and then they knew me well. They knew I was in the Dallas office. I knew we had a pretty good relationship already at the time established from working together for, I believe, about 4 years or so on some pretty large projects as well. So so it was a pretty easy transition in hindsight, but at the time it was also kind of scary because 2020, as everybody knows, was like you mentioned, a pretty big deal and interesting time in our history. But making a career change at that time was also pretty scary because the unknown and what was going to happen. And also there was no meeting in person. There was all the interviews were done over Teams or Zoom. So it was definitely an interesting time to make a change, but it's been a fantastic one. And Stag's a great company. It's a great culture, and Stream was too, which was part of the fear of leaving there, was leaving that culture and the company behind that I'd grown to love and work with for so long. So it's been good, but it was kind of a weird and scary change at the same time. So, but all positive. Like I said, I have no regrets. So,
well, good, man. Sounds like you're happy, and yeah, it's a wild time to make that change. And talking about the Zoom meetings and everything, that's hard in our industry because there's a lot of value, I think, getting on site, seeing what's going on, shaking hands.
Really is.
Especially as a superintendent in the field, I would love to work from home, but that's not an option. So we can't do those things. We still need boots on the ground. And so thankfully, a lot of these hardworking folks out there are really putting the work in place. We're considered essential. I don't know about you guys. We certainly got busier during that time. I can remember demo guys being excited they could work during the day and make noise and see their family. So there's a lot of value to that. So yeah, scary for some, good opportunity for others. Right. So I want to back up. You were in the Marine Corps, not working in engineering. So you weren't a combat engineer. You weren't a construction guy. You got out. You didn't go straight into construction though. What'd you do before what you're doing now?
Yeah, I had a pretty interesting path. I know it happens to a lot of people, but you kind of, you plan something out, and then your path just kind of evolves on its own as you go through months and years, right? So, so when we were getting out, like I said, there were several of us that got extended, and a big group of us were getting out at the same time. A lot of the guys, some of them were auxiliary guys or radar equipment. So I was attached to a Marine Air Control Squadron. I was attached to Max 2-4 and then Max 2 at a point, so we set up and disassembled temporary runways for helos, which is what we did when we were in Iraq, was setting up and breaking down temporary runways for helicopters. So there were several of us that were electronics based and whatnot. So we got recruited by Samsung, actually, down in Austin. They have a clean room fab down there. They needed electronics techs. They actually went looking for and were trying to recruit military personnel that had the electronics background. So they ended up hiring a big group of us, probably 5 or 6 of us. I say a big group, but 5 or 6 of us. They got out. We all moved down there and took jobs at Samsung, and they treated us well. It was a great job. It was a clean room, so you had to go through multiple levels to get into the fab. And get in the big suit, and you're basically walking around in these big white suits with just glasses, and you get to know people by their eyes and how they look at you and stuff and wave. But
hey, that's a skill that paid off for you in 2020, though.
Yeah. So getting to that, I realized pretty quick that wasn't going to be that wasn't the lifestyle I wanted to live, or the type of career I wanted to be in, where I was in a clean room 13 hours a day for 3 or 4 days straight and not interacting with other human beings. I wanted to do something where I was out and about and getting to see things, do things, and interact with people. So I ended up taking a leap of faith, and I took a job with a multifamily company that's based out of California. I happened to know. I made a random call one day to a lady that worked with my property manager when I was living in an apartment outside of the base back when I was in the Marines. And she had moved up, and she was an executive vice president. She was in their Kansas City office. I called her out of the blue, told her I was back from Iraq, and I was looking to make a change and see if she had anything for me. And she ended up, and this is a very summarized version, but she had a opportunity for me up in Kansas, in Topeka, Kansas, and asked if I'd be interested in managing some communities up there. And you know what, let's do it. So I took off to Kansas and got into multifamily property management and did that. The properties were really old. They were they were built in the 50s. So they needed a lot of work. So during my roughly 5 years there, I did a lot of contracting with contractors working on siding, roofing, pavement, fencing, painting, interiors, whatever you name it. I pretty much did it during that time, and did a lot of contracting work. Try to make a long story short here. One of the guys that got out with me, he went to school down in San Marcos at Texas State. And he got an internship with Stream Realty at his junior or senior year. I'm not real clear. Not sure which one, but I remember him calling me and asking me if, I hadn't spoken to him in almost 5 years. And he called me out of the blue one day, was like, "Hey, I heard you got into property management. Are you still doing that? Do you like it?" And it's like, "Yeah, I love it." And he asked me if I'd be interested in commercial property management, and said absolutely. And like I said, he put me in touch with the director of property management with Stream Realty at the time down in San Antonio. We did a lot of phone calls and interviews. This was back in 2012, 2011. By the time, I was 2 states away. So by the time they were ready to make the hire and they got comfortable with me, they'd already hired a property manager. But based on my military background and my leadership background with the military, and my experience with working with contractors in the multifamily side, they asked me if I'd be interested in taking on an entry-level construction role, management role. And it sounded great to me from what they described as far as, working with contractors, doing different types of finish outs and different types of commercial projects, managing those and working with the different types of people and teams. And so, you know what, that sounds like something that I think I could do, and I think I could do it well. So I jumped on the opportunity, wanted to get my foot in the door on the commercial side, and took it and ran with it. And it kind of just grew from there. I ended up transferring to Dallas a few years after I was in San Antonio, to the headquarters. They needed help up there. Dallas was a hot, growing market at the time. And this is like 2015-ish. And it just kind of took off. I started managing more and more portfolios. I managed our Southern California properties and portfolios for a while. And like I said, I managed the Stag portfolio, which is how I ended up where I am now. But it's just kind of grew really quickly and been very exciting at the same time. But I owe it all to one, having the military background, and two, having the college degree as well. So those two things, I think, is how I was able to get where I am today and grow and have these opportunities come my way.
So let me pick apart something real quick. So you're thankful for the military background. So what do you think specifically your service did to help you? What did it teach you? Practical skills, soft skills?
Mm-hmm. So one good thing about the military that I have learned over the years is, and especially the Marines. I'm not sure about I can't speak to the other branches, but the Marines, they put people in leadership positions very early on. They believe in giving, whether it's lance corporals, sergeants, they have people at all ranks really with some type of leadership position, and whether it be just two or three people or a whole squad or platoon, they give you different opportunities to lead classes, to lead workouts, whatever that might be. But they also give you the opportunity for leadership training in schools. There's the Marine Corps University that I got several certifications from. But all of that goes to say that it taught me a lot of skills in leadership, leading a team, making on the spot decisions, being faced with difficult choices and tasks and finding a way to complete them. And in our industry, in the construction world, and especially with what I do right now, you get faced with a lot of decisions on a daily basis. They're always different. Every day is a little different. Everything that comes at you each day is a little different, and you've got to be able to factor in all the things that matter, make decisions pretty quickly, and live with that decision and be confident in your decision. And I think that's one thing the military did very well, is giving you that confidence and that ability to think on the fly, make decisions on the fly, and lead people at the same time, and work as a team as well. I think that's important in our industry, is that knowing how to work as a team and work with different people, and knowing when to take a step back and when somebody may have a better idea or better knowledge, especially with contractors or architects or engineers. They need somebody to manage the whole project, but they may, they're the professionals in their line of work, and working as a team and listening to each group and what they recommend is important as well. So there's a lot of things from the military aspect that they teach you and they instill in you early on, that you carry with you the rest of your life, and in our industry especially.
Yeah, it's good. So there's some things that you kind of said without saying it. Just that teamwork and really listening to your people, I think, is really critical in what we do. And the military is very good at teaching you that, because, I mean, you're probably one of the first guys you would say, I'm not an expert at this. You're not the one really putting physically the work in place. We have to listen to those guys, and they've been doing this a long time. So,
right.
So I would say you become really successful in what you do. I mean, you're only a few years older than I am, so very successful at a younger age. I assume you're late 30s, early 40s. So let me.
I appreciate the late 30s part.
Well, there you go. You're welcome.
Yeah.
So if the reason I say that is because you're not in your 60s yet, but
right.
you've become very successful very fast. Is there anything you maybe would have done differently to either expedite that process, or maybe, stick around somewhere else a little longer, whether it's the Marine Corps or another company? Is there anything that you would suggest someone do maybe just a little differently than you did it?
I don't believe in, I don't really live with a lot of regret. I believe every decision you make, kind of builds you into who you are and gets you where you are. And ultimately, you live and die by those choices, and those choices, you can learn a lot from them, whether they be good ones or bad ones. Overall, I'm happy with the decisions I've made. I don't know if I would change much. If I could look at one thing or point at one thing, I kind of wish I would have started the schooling, the college degree aspect of it while I was in the Marines, prior to deployments, or maybe even while I was deployed. There was opportunity and to start online classes, stuff like that. And I know some of the guys I was with actually did that. And I remember thinking that I should be doing that, but I didn't. I was still young and thought there was plenty of time for that later. So I guess if there's something I could go back and change, I wish I would start getting some college credits a little sooner, a little earlier than waiting till after I got out, and maybe got a little later start on the career path than I would have wanted, because ultimately I had to go to school. But at the same time, like I said, I don't really regret that, because I was gaining valuable experience working in the multifamily side of things and learning from that side while I was getting my degree. So for me, it worked out really well. But for the average person, for anyone else, if I had any recommendations to anybody that might still be in or thinking about transitioning out, start if you plan on getting a degree, start that process as soon as you feel like you're ready, or as early as you can, because it is a journey in getting that degree, and there are going to be ups and downs. It is difficult. And the sooner you can start it, I think the better set up you'll be for when you do get out. And you can maybe finish when you get out, but at least get it started, or take a class or here and there or whatever, but otherwise I feel pretty happy with, my decisions, and, they haven't all been great. They haven't all been the right ones, but, I've learned a lot from the wrong ones and keep moving on with the right ones. So.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. Not that you would regret something, but yeah, you can always look back and maybe tweak a little thing.
Right.
And
Yeah.
there's so many people that don't know within the service. I didn't know all the opportunities that we have to get the free schooling while we're in without using the GI Bill, things like tuition assistance, or there's tons of programs out there, or look at trades, maybe you can go to a trade night school when you're at a non-deployable unit, or you
Exactly.
have some time. So I think you got to have that grit, and that's tough to do when you're early 20s. I get it. You want to go out and party and have fun just like a college kid does. But
Right.
um, yeah, that's me personally. I'm kind of preaching to myself here. That's one thing I agree with you. I wish I'd have started a little earlier. I did do some classes while I was still active duty. I just wish I would have pushed a little harder and maybe knocked out at least like an associate's before I got out. So
Yeah.
I
I
did all that
completely
after.
agree. I'm like you. I didn't realize, it's not advertised as much as it should be. I didn't realize just how much, you could accomplish and do while you're in, how many resources are available to you while you're in. And like you said, that's free of charge. They'll pay for 100% of it. And then after you get out, the GI Bill, that's what I used, and it only pays 80%, so, that's why I was saying at least do a class here or there, get some of those credits out of the way, and it won't cost you a thing. And I definitely think that's something that should be shared more and advertised more, and made known to the active people earlier on. So I wish I would have known.
Sure. Yeah. So that's actually a good segue into another question, is that we all go through this TAP class, the transition assistance.
Right.
What was your experience when you transitioned out? Do you recall this industry being discussed, or anybody from the industry being present?
No, I don't recall anybody from construction or this industry as a whole coming to us. We did have recruiters approaching us. It was mostly on the tech side and the electronic side, and the police. I remember police departments. That was something actually I considered for a while. My brother's a police officer actually, and been successful. He's a commander over in Fort Worth, one of their PDs, but. So I considered that myself, but we had, fire departments, police departments, electronics, tech industry, but unfortunately, I don't recall much on the the construction side at all. Coming to our unit or hearing from anybody, and that's unfortunate, because I think it translates well in
Yeah.
what you learn and what you do in the military, especially with some specific units. And I can only speak to my experience in the military, and then the Marines specifically. I feel like a lot of what they teach us, and how they train us, and how they instill different values in us, translates really well to the construction industry.
Yeah, man, I preach that all the time. It's just such a good transition. There's something new every day. You get the opportunity to lead people like you would in the service. It's very
Exactly.
chaotic and stressful, but we're used to that. We're used to, we're having bombs coming in 1 minute. Now we're out in the field, and we're not getting physically attacked, but you got to shoot, move, and communicate in your own little way to think, okay, here's our issue. How do we resolve it as a team? So it is really,
Sometimes it feels like bombs.
yeah, that's right. Um, no, so that's good. I had the same experience where there was just nobody there, and every guest that I've asked that has said the same thing. They might have been there. I certainly don't recall, but I think that's because the public might have a skewed view of what the construction industry really looks like. So when you were getting out, if you had that opportunity, what was your view at the time of what a construction person is or was?
I didn't really know a lot about it at the time. When you think construction, you think of people on job sites wearing hard hats and yellow vests and, safety goggles and lifting steel into the air, or, even just, hammering nails in. It's just, your typical, I guess, childish like view of what the construction world is like. But, I didn't really know a lot about it. I'd never really, to be honest with you, I never really thought about it that much, or even considered it as a possibility for me. It wasn't something that I grew up thinking about. But it's funny because when I listen, I have a 14-year-old daughter and a 10-year-old son at home, and it's funny when I hear them tell people what I do, because as they've been growing and they get older, I still catch them sometimes, especially my son, telling people that, that I work on a job site, I swing hammers, or I drive forklifts, or whatever, like dump trucks or something. And I was like, man, I have never done that a day in my life. So it's funny sometimes listening to them, but, that's kind of the way, if you would have asked me back then when I was 26 years old, getting out of the Marines, or 25, that's probably about how I would have thought about it. And there's so many different avenues in our industry, and different roles needed, whether it be engineering and architecture, or it be, somebody on the site swinging the hammers, or, the contractors that are estimating the projects, or myself that are managing the projects, or even on the ownership side that's overseeing the projects. There's so many different roles from top to bottom. You don't ever have to pick up a hammer. You don't ever have to drive a construction equipment. But that never gets explained to you. I never heard the opportunity and never knew much about it. So, if it would have been brought to me at that time, I probably wouldn't have thought much about it, to be honest with you, because my experience at the time was in electronics and tech. And, I thought at the time that's probably where I needed to keep going, just to build on that. But there's so much opportunity in our industry. It's a shame that it's not put in front of the military better or more often. So I'm glad that you've got this podcast. I've obviously listened to all of it, and I think what you're doing is great, and it needs to be shared more, because there's a lot of opportunities. I think military personnel, the ones I've worked with in this industry, are thriving and do well. And like you said, it translates well, and what they teach us, what they instill us, and in making decisions on the fly. So whereas people that maybe just went to college and got a construction science degree or something like that, they haven't been faced with that real world situation where they're getting hit with from every angle and needing decisions made right then, right there, that could cost a lot of money, for somebody. So anyways, yeah, it's a lot of opportunity.
No, I agree. And I again think, like your son, he's a great example. People, regardless of their age, they just think, hey, you work in construction, you must be in a dozer somewhere. And not right. That's a bad thing, man. It's really fun running equipment. Don't get me wrong.
I bet it would be. I'd love to do it.
And that's the other thing too, is I think we can appeal to folks who are maybe even younger than the service. I'm trying, or younger than service age. I'm trying to get involved in our local high schools down here south of Dallas. And really get these kids excited about whether it's, hey, do you want to be in a dozer? Do you want to be swinging a hammer and be able to step back and say, I built that? Because there is a lot of pride in that in the field. Or, hey, do you want to work on the financial side? And I think there's all these different avenues within the industry, whether it's finance, safety, HR, anything, exactly. We've got it in the industry. It just happens to be supporting the construction effort, the built environment. So I appreciate you saying it's good that I'm doing this. It's certainly a passion project. So it's a lot of work, but man, it just has to be said, like you said, and I think we can do a better job. I say we, like the veteran community, we can all do a better job within this industry as vets, preaching to our local vets, hey man, I really think this is a good option, because we could go down the rabbit hole of folks getting out and their identity is still the service. And when they lose that, that's where these mental health issues come in.
Absolutely.
The suicidal ideations, is they've lost this purpose. But I really love what I do in the industry. I've been a PM. I'm a superintendent now. I don't know, man. It's hard. There's hard times, as you know, but it's just enjoyable at the end of the day, I think. And it definitely transfers well. So
It really
um,
is. I enjoy tremendously getting to see, something I didn't know until I started this in this industry is how much I would enjoy watching something go from nothing to being this amazing, huge, like even building buildings from the ground up, watching it go from dirt to this building that's going to be there for years that people will drive by and see and experience, or even down to the smallest project where you're finishing out an interior or something, just changing paint and carpet. It's amazing what we are able to do on the construction side. It's almost, yeah, I love what I do so much that it almost think of it as art sometimes. You take something ugly and you make it beautiful, and it's really a neat thing. And and I think a lot of it is the passion and the amount of people that it takes to be able to create what we do and to complete these projects, and everybody working together. And then it comes together at the end, and everybody steps back and looks at it, and it's going to be there for a long time, and people are going to enjoy it and appreciate it. And it gives you a lot of pride, and it, like you said, for people that are getting out, it keeps you focused on something. It keeps you moving on. It keeps you passionate about something. And there's a lot in the construction world and in our industry that can provide that. In any avenue you take in that industry. So it's a great thing. I think it should be out there more, like you said.
yeah,
So
there's also some practical things. Like, I think a lot of people take for granted that when you're working in construction, and even down to being a laborer sometimes, depending on what the company you're at, a lot of
right.
these guys, they have healthcare. They've got PTO, they've got time off.
Mm-hmm.
Even though it might not be necessarily a 9 to 5 job sometimes, especially on the salary side. But it's not like these guys have to live paycheck to paycheck. Now, maybe they're doing that when they're 18, 20 years old and they're getting into they're in an apprenticeship. They're not a journeyman yet. But I'm telling you, I've met some of these guys that are foreman level, superintendent level for the trades, and they're doing very well for themselves. And they did it without any school debt. So if they choose to go that route and not get the college education, it's not like opportunity is not out there. So
Absolutely. Yeah.
our world has changed so much. Calling a plumber out, I haven't had to do that in a while because I'm stubborn. I like to do everything myself. But
Right.
You hear just the crazy high prices that people are able to charge, and good for them. I'm glad they're doing that. But man, the opportunity is there right now to get into a trade and to make a decent living. And people are starting to appreciate the trades more. I feel like I know I've been doing it on the commercial side 12 years now, close to 13. And I've learned a lot about our tradesmen, and I've learned to respect these guys so much. And they're just good people. I think sometimes they get the worst treatment, which sucks. Thankfully, I'm in a position now where I can try to help with that, make sure that they've got some creature comforts, things like that. So that's another aspect of the industry I think people get confused about is, well, I'm going to be in a pit all day. Well, I don't know, man. I'm inside in a 170,000 square foot facility we're completely redoing, and it's not that bad being inside, or it just depends on what sect of the industry you get in, right?
Right.
So anyway.
Yeah. And to just expand on that a little bit, coming into the industry without any construction background whatsoever, especially early on, I had to rely really heavily on my contractors and the subs. And I would ask questions, why do you do it like that? Why is this? And those guys know what they're talking about. And I've grown to, I respect the hell out of all of my subs, all my contractors, down to the lowest, down to the, lowest rank or whatever, the people on site and doing what they're doing. I will sit and talk to them and learn so much from them, because they really are skilled in whatever they do, whatever their trade may be. And anybody can learn. And it's very interesting, being able to do what like a plumber does or electrician and running and how they make it work. And I've had to learn from them on the job training, like we did in the military. I would be on sites learning, and over the years, I've learned things that I've been able to now, look at it, look at a job and say, you know what, I remember a different, this so and so telling me it should be done like this, and looking at, having different options, different ways of doing things because of things I've learned from people on the job doing things that, the way they do them. So and along the way, I'm trying to say, the subs and the contractors and all the way, everybody, it's so interesting. Everybody has a different story and everybody has a different way of doing things, but they all are very intelligent, great people. And I have a lot of respect for all of them.
Yeah. And, I've had this chat with other folks that at the end of the day, everybody seems to be looking for this magic pill that's going to make the industry all better. I've found, at least in my experience, people just want to be respected and treated like adults. They don't want to be screamed at, because that's like the old school superintendent is dressing people down in public, calling them names. Like, gone are those days. And so I think that's another thing that people see about our industry and say, I don't want to do that. I don't want to get
Right.
yelled at all day by some jerk. So it's definitely changed. I've seen a big change in the industry. I'm sure you have as well.
I have. Yes, I
And
agree
man,
completely.
you kind of skirted around it too, but what you're speaking about is the humility aspect of it as well. It's kind of like that junior officer that, hey, I understand they have the rank by title and on paper, but they're leaning on folks like the senior NCOs to really learn the job. That, hey, I understand I might be 20 years your junior. However, I have to make the call, so feed me the information so I can make that call. And it's
That's
that
exactly
mutual
right.
respect. So that's great. So let me ask you last couple questions here. So
Cool.
say you got a vet that's in this industry now. So I love talking to folks like you that have kind of progressed throughout their career into a different position, something very specialized in what you do. So I know I've been there, and I'm sure there's other vets out there that are just kind of feeling like they're in a rut. Like, hey, I don't want to be doing what I'm doing right now for the rest of my life within this industry. What would you say to try to encourage them, or some avenues to try to look to go down?
Yeah, I would say, get out of your head and don't be afraid to take risk. It may seem, you may even feel like you're not there yet. You're not able to make that jump, or it's too risky, or whatever it might be, but take it. If it feels like it's a good opportunity for you and it could lead you in the direction that you want to ultimately end up in, take the risk. I've been put in that position a couple of times throughout my, civilian side career, and I've I've taken the risk. I've made the jump, and I haven't looked back. I haven't regretted it. It's propelled me to new opportunities and growth, and I think if I look back on some of those moments, and if I hadn't taken the risk, or haven't, got out, if I didn't get out of my own head and stayed where I was at, I probably wouldn't have had the opportunities that later came my way, or the growth that I've had since I've been out. So the best advice I can say is, we're taught a lot in the military about making decisions and whatever it takes to get the job done and completing a mission. It's the same thing. Just look at it. Think about it, and if it looks like it can get you to where you want to be, the end goal, the end of the mission, then take that risk. Do what you have to do to get there, and ultimately make that decision, live with it, and don't look back.
Yeah, it's good. I mean, without the risk, there's no reward, right? So,
Exactly.
um,
And in our
and
industry,
I'm
it's kind of like the military. A lot of times, the higher ups, they're looking for people with initiative. They're looking for people that can make decisions, that can do things, to get the job done. And that's the great thing about us with the military background is we've lived and died by that. That's been instilled in us, so we're able to do that. And the people that are that are hiring and making the decisions, ultimately, they're going to end up seeing that quality in you, and you're going to grow. You might have some setbacks here and there. I'm not saying it's always going to be the right decision, but ultimately the risk is going to be worth it in the long run, because that you can't go wrong having a initiative attitude to get things done. So
Yeah, for sure. And I don't think there's anything wrong with the guys that are staying someplace 30, 40 years. I think that's great. And we definitely need those
absolutely.
guys. If
Yeah.
they're happy, at the end of the day, it's about you and your family and
Right.
where you want your career to go. And I'm by no means am I encouraging like the great resignation again, but I think people should also look for those opportunities within their own company. Like if this is a company you love and you just love the culture and the people you work with, however, maybe it's not the right position, your supervisor probably wants to hear about that. And maybe they can help you out and move you into that position where you're happy. It's better for the company. So I wouldn't
Absolutely.
encourage somebody to just start looking right away unless maybe that position just isn't in your company at all. Um, so the last question I got for you, Calvin,
Sure.
is now we go back to our vets. Like the whole purpose of this is trying to really encourage vets to get into the industry or even any young people at all. What would you say to that person that's transitioning out of the service to encourage them to try to look at this industry? So they're 6 months to a year out. What can they do now?
Yeah, so I would say if you're interested in the industry and going to be looking at it, just to give it, start looking into some courses that you may want to get into, some schooling. If you want, depending on where you want to end up or what type of role you want to end up in. But if you get an opportunity, go to a job site, go talk to some contractors, look up some of the bigger contractors in the market, and maybe just let them know, reach out to them. I know a lot of contractors, and especially the owners of some contractors, big contracting companies, I should say, and they're great people, and they love people with initiative and that are looking for opportunities. And they're always looking for help nowadays, especially finding people that are wanting to work and wanting to get in the industry. They're excited about it nowadays. So I think right now is a great time if you're looking to get into the industry and you think that might be something for you as you transition out. I'd start reaching out to some of the bigger contractors, to seeing if you could come tag along for a day or internship, or start looking at some of those opportunities like that. And you would be surprised what doors might end up opening up for you. And just making a few phone calls or stopping by some sites or something. So
That's a really good practical piece of advice. So I'm working on that myself too. I'm trying to get some students from UNT to walk the job. I've got a tour
yeah,
with AIA Young Professionals next week to have them walk through the job, and we just explain it to them. And yeah, I think that's great. And I can speak from my experience too. If somebody's out there listening, if you're in the Dallas Fort Worth area, by all means, reach out to me. I love sharing what we do. I had a kid. I say kid, he's probably 22, maybe. We were looking at him for a possible position. And he showed up at 6 a.m. on my job site. I was very impressed.
nice,
He found another opportunity, which stinks, but I'm like, man, that's the kind of guy I want. He was just motivated.
exactly,
And he said, all right, I'll see you there at 6 a.m. Sure enough, he showed up right before me. So I was very impressed. And there's a lot of other people out there like me that you just find a way to reach out to us, go on LinkedIn, or find a way to reach out to the company. And typically, if you're over 18, we're not going to have any problem with you walking the job site
right,
with us. I took this guy into my meeting, showed him what I did when I'm having my foreman huddle. And it was great. So I'm all about expanding that opportunity for folks. And I'm also, selfishly on my end, I'm trying to look for, okay, who's going to be our next intern? Who's going to be the superintendent someday that replaces me? So it's a very mutually beneficial relationship. We need them and they need an opportunity.
exactly. Yeah,
So
I'm the same way, and especially with military. I mean, I'm open to anybody. When people reach out, I'll sit and talk to anybody, and if make time and go grab lunch, whatever. So and a lot of times, like people like myself, or I've worked with a lot of contractors stuff. People reach out, I can put them in touch with people. If they're excited and they're motivated and they're wanting to learn, I would never turn down anybody away. So.
say they wanted to get a hold of you. What's the best way to reach out, Calvin?
Yeah, multiple avenues. LinkedIn obviously is a great resource. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on, and then our Stag website. I'm on there, and then my email address is just my name, C Mullinax at Stag Industrial. It's pretty simple. And then they can always reach out to me by phone or text. Which I don't you know, if I should give that out, but it's 214-797.
I would not suggest it. You never know what kind of 2 a.m. call you're going to get if you give your
right? Like I said, I have no problem. I like to talk to people. I'm a people's person, so I'll talk to anybody.
And that website is stagindustrial.com, right?
It is. Yes.
Okay. Very cool. Well, Calvin, man, I really appreciate your time. It's been good catching up with you. And there's some good nuggets that I think people can get out of this. So thank you so much.
Absolutely, Scott. I appreciate it, man. I'm proud of you for what you're doing, and I hope you keep it up, and happy to do it.
Thanks for that, man. Appreciate it. If you're a military veteran in the construction industry, or you're in the construction industry and support our military vets, and you'd like to be a guest on the podcast, you can find me at constructionvetpodcast@gmail.com, or send me a message on LinkedIn. You can find me there at Scott Friend. Let's share the stories and motivate others.